Can you tell me about what got you into medicine and where that started?
So I think probably it was because growing up I had a Catholic nanny and babysitter. And so I had a fair amount of just guilt of like in who I am as a human being. And it was only when I was in life-threatening situations and helping other people that I didn't feel so guilty about, who I was. So I felt it improved me morally in some weird way. And so I remember some, experiences of being in the woods and whatnot and helping people out and thinking, I do well in these situations. The best of me comes out when life is on the line, when it requires my full intellectual, emotional dedication. And so I guess it's basically because I'm naturally lazy. And so it's only when there's tremendous need that I am able to put that away and feel that I am at my best. And so, I'd make a terrible, waiter. I'd just be awful and forget it and stuff. But when the it's you're really connecting with people on a real level, or working with serious problems, then geez, that's super fun. Yeah.
And do you feel like that has evolved over time, or has something come up as to your, what makes you tick that has surprised you?
Yeah, I get surprised every day. I think when I was first when I first started medicine, in my training, I was really interested in sort of the course of life. I was, studying both pediatrics and internal medicine, and how people grew and evolved was totally interesting to me. And so, and intellectually, because you could say, look at different disease, a disease state, diabetes, see how you treat it in kids, and see how you treat it in adults, and learn from the comparison. So that part of it, that always comparing the different perspectives, was really interesting to me. And then, like you, I had, a serious brush with mortality. And at that point, all of a sudden, I started to realize that the kind of energy and ambition of building up a career, building up life, was not a complete guarantee of health. That I all of a sudden realized I needed to take care in kind of a deeper way. And so I think now, being able to see people who are vulnerable to the diseases of aging, or have complicated family lives or whatever, that require a lot more thought than a simple encounter that I was experiencing in the emergency department, is super fun, because you get to, you have to think about it more, and you initiate a treatment plan with the patient, and it's not always right the first time, and so being able to work with somebody over time to get it right is, I think, one of the humbling things that you see in this more kind of longitudinal care.
Can you describe what it was like for you to be a patient?
So it was kind of weird in that, it was right in the middle of the pandemic, right? And so it was right when everyone was terrified about COVID. And I think that, the ethic of emergency medicine docs is to be the line in the sand between chaos and order. And so I felt I was right on that freaking line. And so in some ways it was kind of twisted, is that I felt like I was learning actually about the disease in a way like that I can, you know, inform other people, because nobody knew what was going on. So, you know, it was both, it was a big learning experience.
Yeah.
So,
Because then you went through it and you could
Mhm.
learn more about what it actually felt like to be a patient during
Well,
COVID, as well as
yeah.
how to treat it and what worked and didn't through your own.
Well, it was unbelievably intense because, you know, I went basically from the hospital bed to 2 weeks later, or maybe it's more than that, it was 3 weeks, you know, being in San Quentin, you know, helping organize the outbreak there. So being with 3,000 imprisoned patients, you know, some of which are in death row. And at that point, we didn't really know what to do, you know, so, and of course they sent me in, because he's had COVID, and so he volunteered.
Yeah.
So-
Antibodies are pretty good right now.
Right, so it's kind of like, you know, the old, you know, kick, Mikey will do it.
Yeah.
So,
Was that scary for you at that point, or you felt?
I don't think I knew what fear was. I think it was just, you know, more just going with it because there was, you know, no other choice.
Yeah.
You know, so I think in retrospect I was afraid, but I was sort of more deluded, and it was just you know, there was no choice. You're really sick, and now you go back on the job, and because you're the only one that can do it. So it was, I'd say the most moving thing was just seeing the other people go into it also. People who hadn't had COVID, whatever, to walk into, I mean, the gates of San Quentin, it's like the gates of Mordor.
Mm-hmm.
And to see somebody go to work, to walk through those gates knowing that there are 3,000 infected people, and at that point, we didn't know, you know, we thought, well, maybe you could be transmitted with a, you know, look in the eye. We had no idea, right?
Wow.
And to see people go to work every day to
Yeah.
get into that was just, yeah, it was really humbling. So,
What happened, you know, after that? Like, you went back to work, and then at what point did you realize that you wanted to make a transition, or decided to make a transition?
It was kind of weird. I remember flying back from San Francisco to here. It was early on in the pandemic, and I was the only person on the flight. And at that point, you know, they were putting on state quarantines.
Right.
That everything, you know, so I was on that flight. I knew life would be totally different from this day on. Like, I just knew it, and it was like, holy cow.
Right.
And I don't know where it's going, but it's going to be totally different. So, and so.
For you, for the world, or you just?
Yeah, internally, externally, I just,
Everything,
right, you know,
yeah.
life is that way.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
inside and outside, right? So, and then the idea of then, you know, changing career was like, this is a minor change. This is like a piece of cake now.
The world can change.
Right, and
My career.
so I just kind of knew everything was gonna change, and I realized from taking care of other COVID patients who had long-term experiences, because, you know, I had a number of, you know, OB patients at that point who were, you know, with COVID, significant lung disease, and, you know, the OB offices were shut down. They couldn't see their doctors.
Virtual, maybe.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, you know, that was incredibly compelling, and I realized, you know, that so, you know, an interaction in the emergency department is 20, 30 minutes with a patient, but there it's understanding what the patient has and experiencing, you know, going back, reading, talking to specialists in, you know, Boston or, you know, Palo Alto or whatever, and coming up with a treatment plan, you know. I mean, you know, it was gripping, you know. So I thought, yeah, well, this is a different kind of, this is bad. I mean, I've been a kind of researcher before, so I love the nerdy side of it. So this was more thinking than we had, you know, we'd both been in, you know, kind of these treadmills where the idea is to get more efficient and in your thinking and your treatment and everything, that's the pressure. And back away from that and all of a sudden have the curiosity of, you know, when we were young and thinking about medicine, lives and everything. It's incredibly interesting.
It's exciting again.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
You know, we learn stuff every day.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fun, you know, being involved in a, you know, community of doctors and in our group who are interested in challenging each other. And, you know, I know you've challenged me a number of things, and hopefully
Yes.
I've challenged you. And that's so fun.
It is.
You know, it's so fun.
Yeah, I always think back to, there's some books or old textbooks or even the Bates book, just being,
Yeah.
oh, this is so exciting, and, you
Yeah.
know, where that was lost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
When you, so now you've transitioned from emergency medicine to a primary care position. Do you find, like, what are some of the big, I guess, things that seem like, that have stood out to you?
I think it's the connection with people. I think, like, if I'm, you know, driving home and there's a couple little last minute phone calls, you know, I need to make, I think, how lucky am I to have this totally meaningful, totally important, deep, interesting conversation with a couple people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, what would I rather do?